Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that will shake you to your core. In the Middle Ages, you could literally be tortured to death for eating meat on the wrong day, or get your tongue ripped out of your mouth, just for saying the king made a bad choice. But that's just the beginning of tonight's horror story. Imagine living in a world where reading the wrong book could get you burned alive, where being left-handed meant you were marked by the devil himself, where helping a sick person recover could prove you were a witch worthy of execution. This isn't fiction. This isn't exaggeration. These are real stories of real people who died for things we consider completely normal today. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's dive deep into a world so brutal, so unforgiving, that the simplest human actions could lead to the most horrific deaths imaginable. Tonight, we're stepping back into the Middle Ages, where being normal could get you killed, where being exceptional was a death sentence, where showing kindness, intelligence, or curiosity could mark you as an enemy of God himself. We're going to explore 15 different ways that ordinary people became victims of extraordinary cruelty. 15 normal human behaviors that could destroy your life, your family, and your very soul in medieval times. Some of these stories will make you angry. Others will break your heart. All of them will remind you how fragile civilization really is, and how easily fear can turn neighbors into executioners. Are you ready? Because once we start this journey, there's no going back to ignorance about humanity's darkest age. Picture this. It's a cold morning in 1348. Sarah, a merchant's daughter, sits by her window in her family's small stone house. The morning light filters through the thin glass, a luxury most families can't afford. In her hands is a small leather-bound book about the stars and planets. She loves learning about the sky, about the movement of celestial bodies, about the mathematics that govern the heavens above. To her, it's beautiful. To her neighbors watching through the cracks in their wooden shutters, it's pure evil. You see, in the Middle Ages, reading the wrong book wasn't just frowned upon. It wasn't just discouraged or forbidden. It was a death sentence written in your own blood. The church controlled every word, every page, every idea that entered people's minds. They decided what you could read, what you could think, what you could believe. And the punishment for disobedience wasn't just spiritual. It was physical, brutal, and final. Sarah doesn't know it yet, but old Martha next door has been watching her for weeks. Every morning, Martha positions herself by her kitchen window, pretending to knead bread, while actually spying on the merchant's family. Martha sees Sarah reading by candlelight when darkness falls. She watches a girl turn pages of what looks like symbols and strange drawings. She observes Sarah's face, noting the expression of wonder and fascination that crosses the young woman's features as she absorbs forbidden knowledge. Martha's heart fills with fear and anger. That girl is reading devil books. Martha has heard the priest warn about such things during Sunday sermons. Books about stars and mathematics are tools of astrology, and astrology is witchcraft disguised as learning. Martha knows what she has to do. She's a good Christian woman who understands her duty to protect the community from corruption. She must report Sarah's dangerous activities before the girl's evil influence spreads to others. The next morning, 3 men in dark robes knock on Sarah's door with heavy, gloved fists. They're inquisitors, special priests trained to identify and eliminate heretical thinking from Christian communities. Sarah's father, a prosperous cloth merchant named Robert, opens the door with a smile. He expects customers or perhaps fellow merchants seeking to discuss business. Instead, he faces men whose eyes burn with righteous fury and whose hands rest on weapons of holy justice. We have reports of forbidden reading in this household. The lead inquisitor declares, his voice cold as winter stone. Stand aside. We must search these premises for evidence of heretical corruption. Robert's face goes pale. He knows what this means. He's heard whispers about other families who received such visits. Families who were never quite the same afterward. The inquisitors push past Sarah's father and begin searching the house systematically. They examine every book, every scrap of parchment, every written word in the household. They know what to look for: symbols that suggest magical thinking, texts that challenge church doctrine, knowledge that exceeds what common people should possess. Sarah watches from the stairs as these strange men rifle through her family's possessions. She doesn't understand why they seem so angry, why they handle her beloved books like they're dangerous weapons. When they find the astronomy book hidden under her bed, their faces turn cold as stone. The book contains diagrams of planetary movements, calculations of celestial mechanics, observations about the natural world that extend beyond simple Christian cosmology. What is this heretical text? The lead inquisitor demands, holding the book like it might burst into flames. Sarah tries to explain. She says it's just about stars, about God's beautiful creation in the sky, about understanding the divine order that governs celestial movements. But her words only make things worse. The inquisitors exchange knowing glances. This girl speaks about divine order and celestial movements with suspicious familiarity. She understands concepts that should be beyond her comprehension. Clearly, she's been studying forbidden knowledge for far longer than anyone suspected. You speak of divine order, the second inquisitor observes, but you seek to understand God's mysteries through human reason rather than faith. This is the sin of pride, the original temptation that led to humanity's fall. Sarah's mother, Marie, rushes down the stairs and falls to her knees before the inquisitors. She begs them to understand that Sarah is just a curious girl who loves learning, that there's no evil intent in her studies. But the inquisitors aren't interested in intent. They're concerned with results, with the dangerous knowledge that Sarah has already absorbed, with the corruption that such learning inevitably brings to young minds. They grab Sarah by her arms, their grip firm and unyielding. She tries to pull away, but their strength far exceeds her own. They drag her through the narrow stone corridors of her home while her parents follow behind, weeping and pleading for mercy. As they pull Sarah through muddy streets toward the church, neighbors emerge from their houses to watch the procession. Some look sad, remembering Sarah as a sweet child who always greeted them politely. Most look afraid, worried that association with a heretic family might bring suspicion upon their own households. All of them stay silent. Speaking in defense of an accused heretic is itself evidence of heretical thinking. Better to watch in silence than risk joining Sarah on her journey to judgment. The church dungeon is a nightmare from humanity's darkest imagination. Located deep beneath the stone foundation, it's a world of perpetual darkness broken only by the flickering light of occasional torches. The walls are wet and covered in green mold that grows in patterns resembling twisted faces. Rats scurry across the floor, their red eyes gleaming in the darkness as they feast on scraps of food and worse things left behind by previous prisoners. Sarah's thrown into a cell barely large enough for her to lie down. The floor is covered with moldy straw that hasn't been changed in months. The air is thick with the smell of human waste, decay, and despair. She can hear other prisoners in nearby cells. Some cry quietly to themselves, mourning the lives they've lost. Others pray constantly, their voices rising and falling in desperate litanies of repentance. A few have gone mad from confinement, laughing or screaming at random intervals. Some of these prisoners have been here for months. Others will never leave. The dungeon holds scholars who read prohibited books, women who practiced herbal healing, men who questioned church doctrine, and children whose only crime was asking too many questions. For 3 days, they don't feed Sarah. The hunger gnaws at her stomach like a living creature, growing stronger and more painful with each passing hour. She drinks water that drips from the moldy walls, not caring about the taste or the things floating in it. On the 4th day, a priest comes to her cell. Father Benedict is an elderly man with white hair and eyes that burn with fanatic fervor. He's dedicated his life to protecting Christian souls from the corruption of forbidden knowledge. He shows Sarah the astronomy book and asks her to confess her sins. The book looks different now, somehow more threatening in the priest's gnarled hands. This text contains the wisdom of pagan astronomers. Father Benedict explains, men who worshiped false gods and sought to understand divine mysteries through human reason rather than Christian faith. He tells her that reading such evil words has poisoned her soul, that the knowledge she gained came from demonic sources rather than godly inspiration. He says she must repent or burn, that there's no middle ground between salvation and damnation. Sarah is just 17 years old. She loves her family, loves God in her own way, loves learning about the beautiful complexity of creation. But none of that matters now. The only thing that matters is whether she'll confess to crimes she doesn't understand or maintain innocence that no one will believe. She begs Father Benedict to understand that she meant no harm, that she was simply curious about God's creation, that she never intended to challenge church authority or corrupt her soul with pagan wisdom. But the priest just shakes his head sadly. The devil often disguises his temptations as innocent curiosity, he explains. He makes forbidden knowledge seem beautiful and harmless, drawing young minds away from proper Christian thinking. Father Benedict walks away, leaving Sarah alone with her terror and confusion. She doesn't understand how love of learning became evidence of evil, how curiosity about creation became rebellion against the Creator. Outside her cell, she can hear the sounds of other interrogations. Prisoners screaming under torture, confessing crimes they never committed, begging for mercy that never comes. But what they decided for Sarah next changed everything for her family forever. The trial takes place in the church's Great Hall, a cavernous space designed to intimidate those who stand accused of crimes against faith. Tall stone pillars stretch toward a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of heaven and hell, salvation and damnation. Sarah stands before a panel of 5 judges, priests and church officials who dedicated their lives to identifying and eliminating heretical thinking. Behind them hangs a massive crucifix, its wooden Christ staring down at Sarah with eyes that seem to burn with accusation. The evidence against her is presented methodically. The astronomy book is displayed like a weapon of war. Witnesses testify about her suspicious behavior, her unusual intelligence, her dangerous curiosity about subjects that should remain mysteries. Old Martha takes a stand and describes watching Sarah read by candlelight, noting how the girl seemed entranced by the forbidden text, how her face showed sinful pleasure in absorbing pagan knowledge. She read with the dedication of a scholar. Martha testifies, but scholars are men trained in proper Christian thinking. A young woman who shows such devotion to learning must be guided by supernatural forces. Dr. Augustine, a learned theologian, explains to the court why astronomy books are inherently dangerous. He describes how such texts lead readers away from faith-based understanding toward rational analysis of divine mysteries. God reveals his will through scripture and church teaching. Dr. Augustine declares, "Those who seek knowledge through observation and calculation place human reason above divine revelation. This is the fundamental sin of pride." Sarah tries to defend herself, explaining that she sees no conflict between faith and learning, that understanding creation's complexity only increases her awe of the Creator. But her eloquent defense only convinces the judges that her corruption runs deeper than they initially suspected. No 17-year-old girl should be able to speak so intelligently about complex theological concepts without supernatural assistance. Your ability to discuss such matters proves that you've been studying forbidden texts for years, the chief judge declares. Normal young women do not possess such extensive knowledge of heretical concepts. Sarah's father is called to testify about his daughter's behavior. Robert loves Sarah deeply, but he's terrified of being accused of harboring a heretic. He speaks carefully, trying to protect his daughter, without appearing to defend heretical activities. She was always curious, he admits reluctantly, always asking questions, always wanting to understand how things work. I thought it was innocent childhood behavior. But his words are twisted by the prosecution into evidence of long-standing corruption. Sarah's childhood curiosity becomes proof of early demonic influence. Her intelligence becomes evidence of supernatural tutoring. The trial lasts for 3 days. Witness after witness describes Sarah's suspicious activities, her unnatural intelligence, her dangerous fascination with forbidden knowledge. On the 3rd day, the judges deliberate for exactly 1 hour. The verdict is unanimous and final. Guilty of reading heretical texts with intent to corrupt Christian souls, the chief judge announces. Guilty of placing human reason above divine revelation. Guilty of spreading dangerous ideas that threaten the spiritual welfare of this community. Sarah collapses as they pronounce her sentence. She'll be burned alive in the town square, her ashes scattered to prevent her corrupted body from poisoning the earth. But the horror doesn't end with Sarah's condemnation. The judges also rule that her family must be punished for allowing heretical activities in their household. Robert loses his merchant license and all his property. The family is banished from their hometown, forced to wander as beggars seeking shelter wherever they can find it. Sarah's mother, Marie, suffers a complete mental breakdown. She spends her remaining years muttering prayers and begging forgiveness for allowing her daughter to read books. The execution takes place on a bright spring morning when flowers are blooming and birds are singing, a cruel contrast to the horror about to unfold in the town square. They tie Sarah to a wooden stake surrounded by bundles of dry wood. The entire population of the town gathers to watch, including children whose parents believe that witnessing such events teaches important lessons about the consequences of sin. Father Benedict delivers a long sermon about the dangers of intellectual pride and the importance of maintaining proper Christian humility. He explains that Sarah's death will serve as a warning to others who might be tempted by forbidden knowledge. Let this young woman's fate remind us all that human reason is a gift from God, he declares. But when that gift is turned against divine authority, it becomes a curse that destroys both body and soul. Sarah looks out at the crowd and sees faces of people she's known her entire life. The baker who always smiled when she bought bread for her family. The cobbler who repaired her shoes. The neighbors who once praised her intelligence and curiosity. All of them watch silently as the girl they once knew prepares to die for the crime of wanting to understand God's creation. Someone lights the kindling. Smoke begins to rise around Sarah's feet, stinging her eyes and burning her throat. She tries to pray, but fear makes the words stick in her throat. The flames grow higher, reaching toward her legs with hungry orange tongues. The pain is beyond anything she ever imagined, beyond anything the human mind can truly comprehend. Sarah screams, a sound of pure agony that echoes across the town square and into the hearts of everyone watching. Some people turn away, unable to witness such suffering. Others stare with fascination, convinced they're watching divine justice in action. But as Sarah burns, her screams slowly transform into something else. Whether from pain, madness, or divine inspiration, she begins to speak in words that chill the blood of everyone listening. You burn knowledge, she gasps through the smoke and flames. You destroy learning. You murder curiosity. But truth cannot be killed by fire. Someone else will read. Someone else will learn. Someone else will ask the questions you fear. Her prophecy proves correct. Within a generation, the Renaissance begins to sweep across Europe. Books multiply. Learning spreads. The questions that Sarah died for asking become the foundation of scientific revolution. But her individual tragedy remains. A brilliant young woman murdered by ignorance, a life destroyed by fear, a future eliminated by those who claim to serve love and mercy. But what they found in Sarah's cell after her death revealed secrets that changed the Inquisitors forever. The year is 1387. Thomas the blacksmith stands in the village square, sweat dripping from his forehead after another long day at the forge. His hands are calloused from years of shaping hot metal. His back bent from countless hours over the anvil. He's just heard the news that will change his life forever. The king has raised taxes again, the third time this year. Each increase cuts deeper into his family's meager survival. Each demand from the crown pushes him closer to starvation. Thomas thinks about his sick wife, Eleanor, who lies in their small cottage, coughing blood into rags they can't afford to replace. He thinks about his 3 young children, whose ribs show through their thin skin because there's never quite enough food to fill their bellies. He thinks about his blacksmith shop, the only trade he's ever known, barely staying open because fewer people can afford his services. The village grows poorer while the king grows richer, and something inside Thomas finally snaps. This isn't right, Thomas says to the crowd gathered around the town crier who announced a new tax. His voice starts quiet, but grows stronger with each word. We work our fingers to the bone, and for what? So the king can build another castle, while our children starve. The people around him nod. They agree. They're all struggling under the same crushing burden. They all know families who've lost everything to royal taxation. Children who've died because their parents couldn't afford food and medicine. Thomas continues, his words flowing like water through a broken dam. We break our backs in the fields. We labor from dawn to dusk in our shops. We give everything we have to survive. And then the king's men come and take even more, leaving us with nothing but empty bellies and broken dreams. More people gather to hear Thomas speak. His words give voice to their own frustration, their own desperation, their own growing anger at a system that seems designed to crush them into dust. I've been a loyal subject all my life, Thomas declares, his voice carrying across the square. I've paid every tax, followed every law, respected every royal decree. But when does loyalty become stupidity? When does obedience become suicide? The crowd murmurs its agreement. These are dangerous words, treasonous thoughts, but they ring with truth that everyone recognizes. They're all thinking the same things, feeling the same fury, facing the same impossible choices. But in the crowd stands William, the tax collector, the king's representative in their small village. William's face goes pale as he listens to Thomas speak. His hands tremble as he realizes what these words mean. What consequences will follow from such open rebellion? William knows what those words signify in the eyes of royal law. He knows what happens to people who question the king's will, who challenge royal authority, who speak publicly against the crown. Thomas doesn't see William in the crowd. He's too focused on expressing years of pent-up frustration and rage. He continues speaking, his words growing bolder with each passing moment. The king sits in his golden palace, surrounded by luxury we can't even imagine, Thomas says. He eats feasts that could feed our entire village for a month. He wears clothes that cost more than we'll earn in our entire lives. And he demands more from us every day. The crowd grows larger as word spreads through the village that Thomas the blacksmith is saying what everyone thinks, but no one dares to voice. Men and women leave their work to listen. Children are sent to fetch their parents. Even the elderly emerge from their cottages to hear these dangerous words. We're not cattle to be milked until we die, Thomas continues, his voice now carrying to every corner of the square. We're not slaves to be worked to death for another man's benefit. We're human beings with families to feed and lives to live. William the tax collector pushes through the crowd, trying to reach Thomas, trying to stop this treasonous speech before it goes too far. But the crowd is too thick, too focused on Thomas's words to let him through easily. What if we said no? Thomas asks, his voice rising to a shout. What if we refuse to pay taxes we can't afford? What if we kept the food our children need instead of sending it to feed the king's horses? The suggestion electrifies the crowd. The idea of resistance, of fighting back, of refusing to accept their crushing burden. It spreads to the gathered people like fire through dry grass. Some cheer. Others look terrified at the implications. All of them understand that they're witnessing something that will change their community forever. William finally reaches the front of the crowd. Stop this treasonous talk, he shouts at Thomas. You speak against God's anointed king. You incite rebellion against divine authority. Thomas turns to face the tax collector, and for a moment, the two men stare at each other across a gulf that separates the oppressed from their oppressors. Divine authority? Thomas laughs bitterly. Is it divine authority that takes bread from children's mouths? Is it God's will that families freeze in winter because they can't afford firewood after paying royal taxes? William's face flushes red with anger and fear. The king rules by God's grace, he declares. To question royal policy is to question God himself. You commit heresy as well as treason. But Thomas is beyond caring about consequences. Years of suffering are built up inside him like pressure in a forge, and now the dam has burst. Then God is cruel, Thomas says, his words carrying across the suddenly silent square. If God wants children to starve so kings can feast, then God's justice is no justice at all. The blasphemy hangs in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Everyone understands that Thomas has crossed a line from which there could be no return. He's not just questioned royal policy. He's challenged a divine order that justifies royal rule. William knows he must act quickly before Thomas's words corrupt the entire village. Seize this traitor, he commands a few royal guards who accompany him on tax collection rounds. But the crowd has grown too large and too sympathetic to Thomas. The guards hesitate, outnumbered and surrounded by people whose faces show growing anger at the tax collector's presence. Thomas realizes his danger, but he also realizes it's too late to retreat. He's spoken truth, and truth has consequences in a world built on lies and oppression. I spoke from my heart, he tells the crowd. I said what we all think, but feared a voice. If that makes me a traitor, then every honest man in this village is a traitor too. That night, as Thomas sleeps beside his sick wife in their small cottage, royal soldiers surround his house. They arrive in darkness. Dozens of armed men sent from the royal garrison 2 days' ride away. They break down his door with axes and war hammers. The sound of splintering wood fills the night air as Eleanor screams, and the children hide under their thin blankets. Thomas wakes to find sword points at his throat. He tries to protect his family, but he's outnumbered 20 to 1. The soldiers wear chainmail and carry weapons that could cut him in half. They drag Thomas from his bed as his wife screams and his children sob in terror. The youngest, a girl of only 5 years old, calls out "Daddy" as they bind his hands with rough rope. Thomas is thrown onto a horse like a sack of grain. The ride to the royal castle takes 2 days through country he's never seen before. By the time they arrive, his wrists are raw from the ropes, his throat dry as desert sand, his body weak from lack of food and water. The castle dungeon is a place designed to break men's spirits before it breaks their bodies. Located deep underground, it's a maze of stone cells connected by corridors that echo with the sounds of human suffering. Thomas is thrown into a cell barely 6 feet square. The walls weep moisture that never dries. The floor is covered with straw that hasn't been changed in months, stinking of waste and decay. In nearby cells, he discovers other men who spoke against the king. There's a farmer who complained about losing his ancestral land to royal seizure. A baker who said the king's grain taxes were starving his customers. A young priest who preached that all men are equal in God's eyes. Some of these men have been here for years, their bodies wasted by poor food and lack of sunlight. Others are missing fingers, tongues, eyes, evidence of the tortures used to extract confessions and break spirits. They whisper to Thomas about the things they've seen, the horrors that await prisoners who refuse to repent their words against royal authority. They describe the torture chambers, the instruments of pain, the screams that echo through the castle at all hours. Thomas learns that speaking against the king isn't just treason, it's a sin against God himself. Because the king, according to royal doctrine, rules by divine right. His authority comes directly from heaven. To question the king is to question God. The royal theologians have it all worked out, whispers the old farmer in the next cell. Kings are God's representatives on earth. Their will is God's will. Their judgment is divine judgment. The logic is perfect and perfectly insane. If the king is God's representative, then royal taxation is divine commandment. Royal oppression becomes holy duty. Royal cruelty transforms into sacred justice. Any resistance to royal policy is automatically rebellion against God. Any criticism of royal actions is heresy disguised as political opinion. Any suggestion that kings might be wrong is evidence of corrupted thinking that threatens the natural order. Thomas spends 5 days in a dungeon. 5 days of growing horror as he realizes the full scope of the situation. He's not just a political prisoner. He's a religious heretic whose very thoughts are crimes against divine authority. On the 6th day, the guards come for him. They drag him through stone corridors lit by guttering torches, past cells containing other prisoners whose moans and prayers create a symphony of despair. They bring him to a courtyard where a crowd has gathered to witness royal justice in action. In the center stands a wooden platform equipped with a chair fitted with leather straps and metal restraints. Thomas sees his wife Eleanor in the crowd. She's been brought from their village to witness his punishment, her face streaked with tears, her hands reaching toward him across the gulf that separates the condemned from the living. Their children cling to her dress, not understanding why their father is being hurt by strange men in royal colors. The youngest still calls out "Daddy," but Thomas can't respond to the gag they force into his mouth. The executioner approaches, a hooded figure carrying tools designed for precise application of agony. Thomas has heard about such men, specialists in keeping prisoners alive and conscious through extended periods of torture. The crowd watches in fascination and terror as they strap Thomas into the chair. Some spectators are there by choice, drawn by morbid curiosity about royal justice. Others have been ordered to attend as a lesson about the consequences of disloyal thinking. Let this man suffer and remind you all the price of treason, declares a royal magistrate, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Let his screams teach you about the wages of speaking against God's anointed king. The executioner shows Thomas a selection of instruments: red-hot iron for branding, sharp knives for cutting, crushing devices for breaking bones without killing. Confess your crimes against the crown, the magistrate commands. Admit that your treasonous words came from evil thinking. Repent your sins against royal authority. Thomas tries to speak through his gag, tries to maintain his defiance even in the face of unimaginable pain. But when the first hot iron touches his skin, his resolve crumbles like sand before a wave. But what happened next to Thomas would haunt his village for generations to come. The torture lasts for 3 hours. 3 hours of methodical, scientific application of pain designed to extract confession without causing death. The executioner is an expert at his craft, keeping Thomas conscious and responsive throughout the ordeal. Thomas confesses to everything they want to hear. He admits that his words against royal taxation were treasonous. He acknowledges that questioning the king's judgment was rebellion against divine authority. He begs forgiveness for his crimes against crown and God. But confession is not absolution. The royal court has decided that Thomas's treasonous words require permanent punishment, both to satisfy justice and to warn others about the consequences of disloyal thinking. Death by drawing and quartering, the magistrate announces. Let this traitor's body be torn apart as punishment for his attempt to tear apart the bonds of loyalty that hold our kingdom together. Eleanor screams when she hears the sentence. Their children begin crying, not understanding the words, but sensing their terrible meaning. The crowd murmurs with satisfaction. Justice will be served. Order will be maintained. They tie Thomas to 4 horses facing in different directions. The animals are specially trained for this purpose, understanding their role in the ritual of royal justice. The executioner raises his hand, preparing to signal the horses to move. Thomas looks one last time at his wife and children. Try to memorize their faces before the pain makes thought impossible. But in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The crowd, which had been watching with morbid fascination, begins to turn against the spectacle. They see Thomas's family weeping, hear his children calling for their father, and remember their own struggles under royal taxation. He only spoke truth, someone shouts in the back of the crowd. He said what we all think. His children will starve without him, calls another voice. Where's the justice in that? The crowd's mood shifts from satisfaction to anger. They remember Thomas as a good man, a skilled craftsman, a loving father who worked hard and asked for little beyond the chance to feed his family. But it's too late for mercy. The executioner drops his hand. The horses move in opposite directions, and Thomas's screams echo across the courtyard until they suddenly stop. His body is cut into pieces and displayed on poles around the village as a warning to anyone else who might consider speaking against royal authority. Eleanor is forced to walk past her husband's remains every day, a daily reminder of the price of defying the king. The village grows quieter after Thomas's execution. People speak in whispers, afraid that their words might be overheard and reported to royal authorities. Children learn not to ask questions about fairness or justice. But Thomas's death doesn't solve the problems that drove him to speak out. The taxes continue to increase. Families continue to suffer. Children continue to go hungry while the king's wealth grows. And sometimes, late at night when the wind blows through the village square, people swear they can still hear Thomas's voice asking the questions that got him killed. When does loyalty become stupidity? When does obedience become suicide? The questions remain, even though the man who asked them has been silenced forever. But what the king's men discovered in Thomas's cottage after his death revealed the true scope of resistance brewing throughout the kingdom. While they eat scraps, but in the crowd stands William the tax collector. William's face goes pale as he listens to Thomas speak. William knows what those words mean. William knows what happens to people who question the king's will. That night, as Thomas sleeps beside his sick wife, soldiers surround his house. They break down his door with axes. They drag Thomas from his bed as his wife screams and his children hide under their thin blankets. Thomas is thrown onto a horse and taken to the castle dungeons. The ride takes 2 days. By the time they arrive, his wrists are raw from the ropes, his throat dry as dust. He hasn't eaten since they took him. In the dungeon, Thomas meets other men who spoke against the king. There's a farmer who complained about losing his land, a baker who said the king's laws were unfair, a young priest who preached that all men are equal in God's eyes. Some of these men have been here for years. Some are missing fingers, tongues, eyes. They whisper to Thomas about the things they've seen, the things that have been done to prisoners who dare to question royal power. Thomas learns that speaking against the king isn't just treason. It's a sin against God himself. Because the king, they say, rules by divine right. To question the king is to question God. On Thomas's 5th day in the dungeon, the guards come for him. They drag him to a courtyard where a crowd is gathered. In the center stands a wooden platform. On the platform sits a chair with leather straps and metal tools that gleam in the sunlight. Thomas sees his wife in the crowd. She's crying, reaching toward him. Their children cling to her dress, now understanding why their father is being hurt. Thomas wants to call out to them, but his throat won't make a sound. The executioner approaches with a red-hot iron. Thomas closes his eyes and thinks about the words he spoke in the village square. Such simple words. Such true words. But in the Middle Ages, truth was often the most dangerous thing of all. But what happened next to Thomas would haunt his village for generations. Margaret is 8 years old when the sisters at the convent school first notice something terribly wrong with her. She writes with her left hand. When they tell her to use her right hand instead, she tries her best, but the letters come out shaky and wrong, like broken spider webs across the parchment. Sister Catherine, the head nun, watches Margaret struggle with growing alarm. The sister's weathered face grows dark with worry as she observes this clear sign of demonic influence. She's seen this before. She knows exactly what it means when a child prefers a left hand over the right. The left hand is the devil's hand. Sister Catherine whispers to the other nuns during their evening prayers. It's the hand of evil, of sin, of corruption. The hand that reaches toward hell rather than heaven. We must save this child's soul before it's too late. The medieval world has very specific beliefs about left-handedness. The right hand is associated with righteousness, with God, with all things good and holy. The left hand belongs to Satan, representing evil, corruption, and damnation. This isn't superstition to Sister Catherine. It's scientific fact supported by centuries of theological study. Left-handed children are either possessed by demons or marked by the devil for future service. Either way, they represent a clear and present danger to every soul around them. The nuns begin Margaret's correction the very next morning. They tie her left hand behind her back with rough hemp rope that chafes her delicate skin raw. When she cries in the pain, they tell her it's God's will. When she begs to use her left hand, they say she's being tempted by Satan himself. The devil whispers in your left ear, Sister Catherine explains as she tightens the rope. He makes that evil hand seem natural to you, but we know better. We'll teach you to resist his influence. For weeks, Margaret struggles to write, to eat, to do simple tasks with only her right hand. Her penmanship, once neat and careful, becomes illegible scratches that earn her beatings for being lazy and careless. Her right hand cramps constantly from the unnatural effort. Her arm aches from shoulder to fingertip. But worse than the physical pain is a constant message that something fundamental about her is evil and wrong. The other children start to notice Margaret's unusual situation. They whisper that she's cursed by the devil. They say evil spirits live in her left hand, waiting to jump into anyone who touches her. During meals, children refuse to sit near Margaret. During lessons, they won't share books or materials with her. During playtime, they throw stones and call her devil child and witch hand. Margaret becomes isolated and friendless, marked as dangerous by her own classmates. She starts to believe what they tell her, that she really is evil, that her left hand really does belong to Satan, that she's a threat to everyone around her. Sister Catherine increases the pressure when Margaret's progress seems too slow. She makes the girl wear mittens filled with thorns on her left hand, so that any attempt to use it results in immediate pain. The devil must be driven out through suffering, Sister Catherine explains to the other nuns. Comfort only makes demons stronger. Pain weakens their hold on corrupted souls. Margaret's left hand becomes covered with small wounds from the thorns. The cuts become infected in the dirty mitten, turning red and swollen. But when Margaret complains about the pain, Sister Catherine says it's proof that the demons are fighting to maintain their hold. Margaret's mother, Elena, comes to visit and sees the rope burns on her daughter's wrist, the infected wounds on her hand, the haunted look in her eyes. When she asks what happened, Sister Catherine explains that they're saving Margaret from eternal damnation. Better a painful life with God, the sister says, than an easy life with the devil. Would you rather have a left-handed daughter or a daughter burning in hell? Elena, though her heart is breaking, nods and agrees. She's been taught the same beliefs about left-handedness. She's heard the same warnings about children who show signs of demonic influence. As much as it hurts to see Margaret suffer, Elena believes it's necessary to save her soul. Months pass in this nightmare correction and pain. Margaret learns to use her right hand for basic tasks, but it never feels natural. She has recurring nightmares about demons coming for her left hand, about being dragged to hell for sin of being born wrong. She starts to flinch whenever anyone looks at her hands. She hides her left arm inside her sleeve, ashamed of the evil appendage that marks her as cursed. She prays every night for God to take away her left hand entirely if that's what it takes to make her normal. One day, during writing lessons, Margaret's exhausted right hand begins to cramp severely. Without thinking, her left hand starts to move toward the quill pen. It's an unconscious gesture, her body's natural attempt to relieve the strain. Sister Catherine sees this movement and screams as if she's witnessed actual demonic manifestation. The devil is still in her, the sister shouts, her voice echoing through the stone classroom. She's not been cured. The evil is too strong. It fights against our holy work. The other nuns rush to Margaret's desk, surrounding the terrified child like she's a dangerous animal. They grab her left hand and examine it, as if looking for visible signs of demonic presence. "Look how strong it is," whispers Sister Mary. "See how it moves toward forbidden actions. The demons have made their home in this hand." They drag Margaret to the convent's basement chapel, a cold stone room filled with religious artifacts and instruments of spiritual purification. They tie her to a wooden chair and begin to pray over her with increasing desperation. They sprinkle holy water on her left hand until the skin turns red and raw from the constant moisture. They wave burning incense around her until she can barely breathe. They chant Latin prayers and sing hymns while Margaret sobs and promises she'll never use her left hand again. "I'll be good," she cries between their prayers. "I'll be normal. I'll be right-handed like God wants. Please don't let the demons take me." But her pleas only convince the sisters that the evil spirits are fighting harder to maintain their hold. The more Margaret protests her innocence, the more guilty she appears in her eyes. Sister Catherine brings out more extreme measures. She has Margaret hold her left hand in a bowl of ice water until the fingers turn blue and numb. She makes the girl wear a metal bracelet heated in the fire until it burns the skin of her wrist. "The demons hate holy pain," Sister Catherine explains as Margaret screams. "Each moment of suffering drives them further from your corrupted flesh." For hours, they continue these exorcism rituals. Margaret passes out from pain several times, but they revive her with cold water and continue their holy work. They're convinced they're saving her soul, even as they destroy her spirit. Finally, broken by agony and desperate to make the torment stop, Margaret confesses to everything they want to hear. "Yes," she sobs, "the devil lives in my left hand. He whispers to me. He makes me want to use the evil hand. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please make him go away." The sisters smile with satisfaction, convinced that they've finally broken through Margaret's demonic defenses. But confession is only the beginning of Margaret's ordeal. The devil's influence runs deep, Sister Catherine declares. Simply acknowledging his presence is enough. We must drive him out completely, no matter what the cost. So they make a decision that will scar Margaret for the rest of her life. They decide that Margaret's left hand is too corrupted to be saved, too infected with evil to ever be trusted again. But what they chose to do to an 8-year-old girl still haunts me to this day. They heat an iron poker in the chapel fire until it glows red hot. Margaret watches in terror as Sister Catherine approaches with the burning metal. the heat radiating from it like the breath of hell itself. "We must mark your evil hand," Sister Catherine explains, her voice gentle despite the horror she's about to inflict. "We must brand it with holy symbols so everyone will know of its corruption. This will protect others from its influence." They hold Margaret down as Sister Catherine presses the red-hot iron against her left palm. The smell of burning flesh fills the chapel as Margaret's screams echo off the stone walls. The brand leaves a permanent scar in the shape of a cross, burning deep into Margaret's palm. For the rest of her life, she'll carry this mark, a constant reminder of the evil that supposedly lived in her left hand. But the branding is only the beginning. Sister Catherine decides that Margaret's left hand is still too dangerous to be allowed normal function. She orders that 3 of Margaret's left fingers be broken and set incorrectly, crippling the hand permanently. "A crippled evil hand can do less harm than a healthy one," she reasons. "This is mercy, not cruelty. We're protecting Margaret and everyone around her." They break Margaret's fingers with a heavy wooden mallet, the bones snapping like dry twigs. Margaret faints from the pain, but they revive her to witness the completion of their holy work. When they set the bones, they do so incorrectly on purpose, ensuring that the fingers will heal at wrong angles. Margaret's left hand becomes a twisted claw, useless for any fine work. Margaret spends weeks recovering from her injuries, her left hand swollen and throbbing with constant pain. The other children stare at her branded palm and crippled fingers with fascination and horror. "Now everyone can see your evil nature," one boy tells her during mealtime. "God marked you so we know to stay away." Margaret learns to do everything with her right hand, but the psychological damage goes far deeper than the physical injuries. She grows up believing that she's fundamentally evil, that part of her body belongs to Satan, that she's a danger to everyone around her. She never marries, convinced that no good man will want a wife with the devil's hand. She never has children, afraid that she might pass her curse to innocent babies. She lives as a social outcast, marked by her scars and the story everyone knows about her demonic correction. But the tragedy doesn't end with Margaret's individual suffering. Her treatment becomes an example for other left-handed children throughout the region. Parents bring their cursed offspring to Sister Catherine for similar correction, spreading the cycle of abuse and mutilation. Dozens of children suffer broken bones, burned flesh, and psychological torment in the name of saving their souls from left-handed damnation. A generation of young people grows up crippled and traumatized by adults who claim to love them. Margaret lives to be 67 years old, dying alone in a small cottage on the edge of town. Her left hand, branded and crippled, has never functioned normally since her childhood correction. But in her final days, something beautiful happens. Margaret meets a traveling scholar who explains that left-handedness is simply a natural variation in human beings, no more evil than having brown eyes or curly hair. For the first time in her life, Margaret understands that her childhood torture was based on ignorance and fear rather than divine truth. She realizes that she was never evil, never cursed, never dangerous. The revelation brings her both comfort and rage. Comfort to know she wasn't born wrong. Rage to understand how much of her life was stolen by superstition and cruelty. Margaret dies holding her crippled left hand against her heart, finally accepting the part of herself that others had branded as evil. She's buried in an unmarked grave, forgotten by a world that feared her for no reason at all. But what they found written in Margaret's cottage after her death proves that some spirits can never be truly broken. Hidden beneath loose floorboards, investigators discovered dozens of pages covered with beautiful writing, all done with Margaret's supposedly evil left hand. Despite the pain, despite the crippling, despite a lifetime of shame, Margaret had secretly continued to write with her natural hand. The pages contained poetry, stories, observations about the natural world, and philosophical thoughts about the cruelty of human beings. The handwriting is elegant and graceful, everything that Margaret's forced right-hand writing never achieved. Her secret writings reveal a brilliant mind trapped in a broken body, a creative spirit crushed by ignorant fear. They show that Margaret's left hand was never evil. It was simply different, and in the medieval world, different always meant dangerous. The pages are burned by church authorities, who declare them evidence of Margaret's lifelong struggle with demonic influence. They use her secret writing as proof that their childhood intervention was necessary and justified. But a few pages survive, hidden by sympathetic readers who recognize their beauty and tragic significance. These fragments become evidence of the medieval world's capacity for destroying what it should have celebrated, punishing what it should have treasured. Margaret's story spreads quietly through networks of scholars and free thinkers, becoming a symbol of ignorance's victory over innocence. Her crippled hand becomes a metaphor for humanity's tendency to wound what it fears to understand. And sometimes, when modern people face discrimination for being different, being unusual, or being themselves, they remember Margaret and her branded palm, and they understand that the price of conformity can be measured in broken bones and scarred flesh. Her story reminds us that evil often wears a mask of righteousness, that cruelty often claims to serve love, and that the most dangerous people are those who torture children while believing they're saving souls. Margaret was 8 years old when they decided her left hand belonged to the devil. She was 67 when she died knowing the truth. In between, she lived 59 years of unnecessary shame and pain. But her secret writings prove that some things cannot be broken by torture, cannot be destroyed by ignorance, cannot be silenced by fear. Beauty finds a way. Truth survives. Love endures, even when it's written with the devil's hand. But what happened to the other left-handed children in Margaret's village shows that her suffering was just the beginning. The market day in 1423 starts like any other. Anna, a weaver's daughter, puts on her best dress. It's a beautiful deep purple, made from fabric her father traded for months ago. She feels pretty, confident, ready to sell their cloth at the market. Anna doesn't know that purple is a color of royalty. She doesn't know that wearing it could cost her everything. As Anna walks through the market square, people stop and stare. Some point and whisper. Others look afraid. A few brave souls try to warn her, but Anna doesn't understand their urgent whispers. Then she sees him, Lord Edmund, the local noble, riding through the market on his black horse. His eyes scan the crowd and stop on Anna. His face turns red with rage. "Seize that girl," he shouts to his guards. How dare a peasant mock the crown by wearing royal colors? The guards grab Anna before she can run. She tries to explain that it's just a dress, that she meant no harm, that she didn't know about the law. But the guards don't care about her tears or her pleas. They drag her to the castle, where Lord Edmund sits in judgment. The great hall is cold and dark, filled with nobles who look at Anna like she's something disgusting they found on their shoes. "You stand accused of impersonating nobility," Lord Edmund declares, "of wearing colors reserved for those of royal blood, of insulting the natural order that God has decreed." Anna falls to her knees. She begs for mercy. She explains that her father is just a simple weaver, that they didn't know about the color laws, that she would never insult the nobles or the king. But her words fall on deaf ears. In the Middle Ages, ignorance was not an excuse. The law was the law, whether you knew it or not. Lord Edmund stands and walks around Anna like she's an animal at market. He examines her dress, feeling the quality of the fabric, noting how well it's made. "This is fine cloth," he says, "too fine for a peasant. Not only did you wear forbidden colors, you wore them in luxury that exceeds your station." The crowd of nobles murmur their agreement. Anna feels their eyes burning into her, judging her, condemning her. "Strip her," Lord Edmund commands. The guards tear the purple dress from Anna's body, leaving her in her thin undergarments. She tries to cover herself as the nobles laugh and point. Her beautiful dress, the one she felt so proud in, lies in tatters on the stone floor. But the humiliation is just the beginning. 50 lashes, Lord Edmund declares. And let it be known throughout the land that this is what happens to peasants who forget their place. They tie Anna to a wooden post in the castle courtyard. A crowd gathers to watch. Her parents push through the crowd, crying and begging for mercy. But the guards hold them back with swords and spears. The whip cracks through the air. Anna screams. Blood runs down her back. The crowd watches in silence, some looking away, others staring with fascination at the brutal spectacle. After 20 lashes, Anna stops screaming. After 30, she stops moving. After 40, her parents stop begging and start praying. But what happened after the 50th lash, no one expected. The wedding celebration in Strasbourg should have been a joyful day. Heinrich marries his beloved Clara on a warm summer morning in 1518. The whole town comes to celebrate. There's music, food, and dancing in the streets. It starts innocently. A few people begin to dance to the music. Their feet move to the rhythm. Their bodies sway with joy. It feels good to move, to celebrate, to be alive. But something strange begins to happen. The dancers can't stop. What started as celebration becomes compulsion. Their feet keep moving even when the music stops. Their bodies twist and turn against their will. Heinrich watches in horror as his new bride Clara spins and leaps with wild eyes. She tries to stop, tries to sit down, but her legs keep dancing. Sweat pours down her face. Her breathing becomes ragged and desperate. "Help me," she gasps between spins. I can't stop." More people join the dance. Not by choice, but as if pulled by invisible strings. Men, women, children, all dancing with jerky, unnatural movements. Their faces show not joy, but terror. The town priest arrives and sees the chaos. To him, this is clearly the work of the devil. Dancing has always been suspicious to the church. Dancing leads to sin, to lust, to evil thoughts. But this is pure demonic possession. "Stop this unholy display," the priest shouts. But the dancers can't stop. They dance through the night, through the next day, through another night. Some collapse from exhaustion, but their bodies keep twitching and moving on the ground. Others dance until their feet bleed, leaving red footprints on the cobblestones. Clara dances for 3 days straight. Her wedding dress is torn and dirty. Her hair has come undone and whips around her face as she spins. Heinrich follows her, try to catch her, trying to make her stop, but she dances away from his reaching hands. The church declares that the town is cursed. They say that dancing is punishment for the people's sins. They order everyone to pray, to repent, to beg God for forgiveness. But the dancing continues. More people join every day. The sound of hundreds of feet on stone echoes through the streets like thunder. The town becomes a nightmare of endless, unstoppable movement. After a week, Clara's heart gives out. She collapses in the middle of a spin and doesn't get back up. Heinrich holds her still body as around them. Dozens of others continue their possessed dance. But Clara is not the only one who will die. The dancing plague of 1518 has only just begun. The authorities try everything. They ban music, thinking that will stop the dancing. It doesn't work. They bring in more musicians, thinking music will cure the dancers. That only makes it worse. They build a stage and hire professional dancers, hoping to dance the curse away. Instead, the professionals become infected too, their skilled movements turning into the same jerky, desperate motions as everyone else. Some dancers throw themselves into the river, preferring drowning to the endless torment of movement. Others dance until their bones break, but still their broken bodies continue to move. Heinrich watches his town destroy itself through dance. He watches neighbors he's known his whole life twist and writhe until they collapse and die. He watches children dance themselves to death while their parents weep and pray. The church brings in holy relics, sprinkles holy water, performs exorcisms. Nothing works. The dancing spreads like fire, consuming everything in its path. After a month, over 400 people have danced themselves to death. The streets are littered with bodies. The survivors are traumatized, afraid to move, afraid that any small step might trigger the curse again. Heinrich stands in the empty town square, where his wedding celebration began. The silence is deafening after weeks of constant movement and music. He looks at the bloodstains on the stones and wonders if joy itself has become dangerous. But what the church decided to do to prevent future dancing was worse than the plague itself. Eleanor loves books more than anything in the world. At 12 years old, she can read Latin, write poetry, and solve mathematics problems that confuse grown men. Her father, a wealthy merchant, is proud of his brilliant daughter. But Eleanor's mother watches her with growing fear. In 1445, educated women are dangerous. They ask too many questions, challenge too many beliefs, threaten too many men, who think they're smarter than everyone else. She reads too much, Eleanor's mother tells her husband. The neighbors are starting to talk. They say she's unnatural. Eleanor doesn't understand why learning is wrong. She studies by candlelight, copying texts about medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. To her, knowledge is beautiful. To her community, her knowledge is terrifying. The trouble starts when Eleanor corrects Father Benedict during Mass. The priest makes an error while reading from the Bible, mistranslating a Latin passage. Without thinking, Eleanor whispers a correct translation to her mother, but the woman next to them hears. She turns and stares at Eleanor with wide, frightened eyes. A 12-year-old girl who knows Latin better than the priest? This is not natural. This is not godly. Word spreads quickly through the small town. Eleanor, the merchant's daughter, can read Latin. She knows things that only priests should know. She has knowledge that God never intended women to possess. The whispers start quietly. People cross themselves when Eleanor walks by. Mothers pull their children away from her. Merchants refuse to trade with her father. Then the accusations begin. If Eleanor is so smart, people reason, she must have made a deal with the devil. How else could a girl learn so much? Women's minds aren't meant for complex thoughts. If Eleanor can think like a man, she must be possessed by evil spirits. Father Benedict, embarrassed by being corrected by a child, fans the flames of suspicion. He preaches about the dangers of women who seek knowledge beyond their station. He warns that educated women are the devil's favorite tools. Knowledge puffs up, he declares from the pulpit, and pride comes before fall. Women who seek to be wise become fools. They open their minds to Satan's lies. Eleanor's parents try to protect her. They hide her books, forbid her from reading, tell her to act like other girls her age. But it's too late. The town has decided that Eleanor is dangerous. The witch hunters arrive on a cold October morning. They're traveling priests who specialize in finding and punishing people who consort with demons. They've heard about Eleanor and her unnatural intelligence. They examine Eleanor like she's a specimen. They ask her questions designed to trap her. When she answers correctly, they say it proves she has supernatural help. When she answers incorrectly, they say she's trying to hide her powers. No girl of 12 should know such things, the lead witch hunter declares. This knowledge comes from an unholy source. She has made a pact with dark forces. Eleanor tries to explain that she just likes to learn, that her father taught her to read, that she's never spoken to demons or devils. But every word she speaks only convinces them more of her guilt. They search her room and find her books. Each one is evidence of her corruption. Poetry proves she has unnatural thoughts. Mathematics proves she communes with evil spirits who whisper secrets in her ear. Philosophy proves she questions God's will. Eleanor's parents beg for mercy. They offer money, land, anything to save their daughter. But the witch hunters are not interested in bribes. They have a sacred duty to cleanse the community of evil. Eleanor is taken to a special chamber beneath the church. The walls are covered with tools designed to extract confessions from suspected witches. Iron clamps, heated brands, thumbscrews, and other instruments of pain. Confess your sins, they tell her. Tell us about your bargain with Satan. Admit that you traded your soul for knowledge, and we will make your death quick. Eleanor, terrified and confused, maintains her innocence. She swears she's never met the devil, never made any bargains, never done anything but read books and learn. But in the Middle Ages, innocence means nothing. If you're accused of witchcraft, you're guilty. The only question is how much pain you'll endure before you confess. But what they did to Eleanor to make her confess will break your heart. Robert oversleeps on Sunday morning. He's been working 16-hour days at the mill, his body exhausted, his mind foggy with fatigue. When he wakes up, the church bells have already stopped ringing. Mass has begun without him. He considers rushing to church, but he's dirty from work. His clothes are stained, and he knows he'll only disrupt the service by arriving late. So Robert makes a decision that will change his life forever. He decides to rest. This is Robert's first missed Sunday in 15 years. But in a small village in 1492, missing church isn't just a minor sin. It's a sign of spiritual rebellion, a crack in the foundation of community order. Agnes, the baker's wife, notices Robert's absence immediately. She sits in the front row and counts every head, every family, every person who should be present. When she doesn't see Robert, her heart fills with righteous anger. After Mass, Agnes speaks to Father Thomas. She tells him about Robert's absence, about how she's noticed him looking tired and distant lately, about how he might be losing his faith. Father Thomas nods gravely. He's seen this before. It starts with one missed service, then another. Before you know it, the person stops believing entirely. And when people stop believing, they become dangerous to everyone around them. That afternoon, Father Thomas visits Robert at his small cottage. He finds Robert chopping wood, preparing for winter. Robert greets the priest warmly, apologizing for missing Mass and explaining about his exhaustion. But Father Thomas doesn't seem interested in explanations. His face is stern, his voice cold. The devil doesn't rest on Sunday, he says. Why should God's children? Robert tries to laugh it off, but he sees a serious look in the priest's eyes. This isn't a friendly visit. This is an interrogation. Are you losing your faith, Robert? Father Thomas asks, are you questioning God's commandments? Do you think your work is more important than worship? Robert quickly denies any loss of faith. He explains that he loves God, respects the church, would never willingly miss Mass. He was just tired, just needed rest, just made a mistake. But Father Thomas has heard these excuses before. In his experience, people who skip church once will skip it again. And people who skip church regularly are on the path to heresy, apostasy, and eternal damnation. You will attend every service this week. Father Thomas commands. Morning prayers, evening prayers, and extra confession. You will demonstrate your commitment to God or face the consequences. Robert agrees immediately. He doesn't want trouble. He just wants to work, provide for himself, live in peace. But his troubles are just beginning. Word of Robert's missed Sunday spreads to the village like wildfire. People who have known him for years suddenly look at him with suspicion. They wonder what he was really doing while they were at church. They question his morals, his character, his loyalty to their community. The miller, Robert's employer, calls him in for a talk. He explains that he can't have workers who don't respect God and the church. What kind of message does that send? What kind of example does that set? I need workers I can trust, the miller says. Workers who share our values, our beliefs, our commitment to righteous living. Are you that kind of worker, Robert? Robert loses his job that day. No explanation given. No opportunity to defend himself. Just a dismissal based on one missed church service. But losing his job is the least of Robert's problems. Without work, he can't pay his rent. Without rent money, he becomes homeless. Without a home, he becomes a vagrant. And in the Middle Ages, vagrants are criminals. The church court summons Robert to answer charges of spiritual negligence. He stands before Father Thomas and two other priests, all wearing stern expressions and black robes that make them look like vultures. You have abandoned your Christian duties, Father Thomas declares. You have chosen worldly concerns over spiritual ones. You have set a dangerous example for other members of this community. Robert pleads his case. He explains about his fatigue, his dedication to work, his lifelong faith. He promises to attend every service, to be a model Christian, to never miss church again. But the priests have already made their decision. Robert's one absence has revealed a corrupt character, a weak faith, a dangerous influence on others. He must be punished as an example to the community. 30 days in the stocks, Father Thomas announces, followed by banishment from this parish. You are no longer welcome in God's house or in this community. They lock Robert in wooden stocks in the town square. For 30 days, he sits with his head and hands trapped in the wooden frame. People throw rotten food at him, spit on him, curse him as they walk by. Children are brought to see Robert as a lesson about what happens to people who don't go to church. Parents point at him and tell their sons and daughters, this is what happens when you stop loving God. Rain soaks Robert to bone. Sun burns his skin. His body becomes stiff and painful from the constant, uncomfortable position. But the physical pain is nothing compared to the emotional agony of being rejected by his entire community. After 30 days, they release Robert and escort him to the village boundary. They tell him never to return, that he's no longer welcome among God-fearing people. Robert walks away from the only home he's ever known, carrying nothing but the clothes on his back and the crushing weight of his destroyed life. But what happened to Robert after his banishment shows how cruel the world could be to the faithless. Marcus has gentle hands and a sharp mind. At 22, he knows more about healing herbs than men twice his age. He can set broken bones, treat fevers, and ease pain with natural remedies learned from his grandfather. There's just one problem. Marcus can't grow a beard. In 1456, a man without facial hair isn't considered a real man. And if you're not a real man, you can't be trusted with the serious business of medicine. The reasoning is simple. Beards show wisdom, maturity, and divine favor. A beardless man is clearly cursed by God. Marcus tries everything to grow facial hair. He rubs oils on his face, eats special foods, prays for whiskers. Nothing works. His chin remains smooth as a child's, marking him as unfit for adult responsibilities. When old Henrik, the village healer, dies, the community needs someone to take his place. Marcus is the obvious choice. He knows the remedies, understands the herbs, has watched Henrik work for years. But when Marcus offers his services, the village elders shake their heads. Look at him, Elder William says, pointing at Marcus's smooth face. He looks like a boy. How can we trust our lives to someone who can't even grow a man's beard? The other elders murmur their agreement. In their minds, Marcus's hairless face is proof of his immaturity, his lack of divine blessing, his unfitness for important work. But people are getting sick, and there's no other healer available. Desperate families secretly bring their loved ones to Marcus. He treats a miller's infected wound, cures a child's fever, helps a woman through a difficult birth. Word of Marcus's successful treatments spreads quietly through the village. People whisper about the young healer, who works miracles despite his smooth face. Some begin to wonder if maybe beards don't matter as much as skill and knowledge. But not everyone is happy about Marcus's growing reputation. Dr. Aldrich, a traveling physician with an impressive gray beard, arrives in town and hears about the beardless healer. He's outraged that someone so obviously unqualified is practicing medicine. This is an insult to our profession, Dr. Aldrich declares to the village elders. Medicine is a sacred art, passed down from bearded master to bearded student for generations. This boy mocks everything we stand for. Dr. Aldrich examines some of Marcus's patients and declares that the young man is practicing witchcraft, not medicine. How else could someone so young and beardless achieve such results? Clearly, Marcus has made a pact with dark forces. The accusation of witchcraft changes everything. The families who secretly sought Marcus's help now deny ever knowing him. The village elders who were beginning to accept him now call for his arrest. Marcus is dragged before the church court, where Father Benedict presides with a magnificent white beard that reaches nearly to his waist. The contrast between the priest's impressive facial hair and Marcus's smooth chin couldn't be more stark. God gives beards to men as a sign of their authority. Father Benedict declares, "A man without a beard is incomplete, unfinished, unfit to make decisions about life and death." Marcus tries to defend himself. He explains that his remedies come from herbs and knowledge, not magic. He shows them the books he studied, the notes he's taken, the careful observations he's made about different treatments. But his learning only makes things worse. The court reasons that if Marcus can't grow a beard, he must be unnaturally intelligent. And unnatural intelligence comes from the devil. You have traded your manhood for forbidden knowledge. Father Benedict accuses. You have sacrificed your God-given ability to grow facial hair in exchange for magical healing powers. The trial lasts 3 days. Witnesses testify about Marcus's treatments, but now they describe them as supernatural rather than skillful. A fever that broke naturally becomes a demonic cure. A wound that healed cleanly becomes evidence of otherworldly intervention. Dr. Aldrich, stroking his impressive beard throughout his testimony, explains to the court how proper medicine works. He describes the importance of beards in medical practice, the ancient traditions that govern healing, the divine order that places bearded men above beardless boys. Marcus's mother begs for mercy, pointing out that her son has only helped people, never harmed anyone. But the court isn't interested in results. They're concerned with proper order, divine law, and a natural hierarchy that puts bearded men in positions of authority. The verdict is unanimous. Marcus is guilty of practicing medicine without proper masculine qualifications. His smooth face is evidence of his unfitness. His success proof of his corruption. 20 lashes and permanent banishment. Father Benedict announces, "Let no community ever again be deceived by this beardless pretender." They strip Marcus to the waist in the town square. His smooth, pale chest makes him look even younger, even less qualified to be a healer. The crowd gathers to watch his punishment, many of them people he once helped. The whip falls across Marcus's back. He tries not to cry out, but the pain is overwhelming. With each lash, the crowd count along, their voices echoing through the square. After the beating, they drag Marcus to the village boundary and throw him into the dirt. His back is bloody, his spirit broken, his life as a healer over. But what Marcus discovered in the wilderness proved that sometimes the outcasts find the greatest truths. Elena walks into the village of Millbrook on a misty autumn morning in 1478. She's traveled from 3 towns over, looking for work as a seamstress. Her clothes are different, her accent unfamiliar, her face unknown to everyone she meets. In Elena's mind, she's just a woman seeking a new life. In the minds of the villagers, she's a threat that must be eliminated. The baker's wife, Mary, is the first to spot Elena. She watches from her shop window as a stranger walks down the main street, looking around with curious eyes. Mary's heart fills with suspicion and fear. Strangers bring trouble. Everyone knows this. They carry diseases, spread false ideas, work for enemies, or practice dark magic. A stranger is guilty until proven innocent, and proof of innocence is almost impossible to provide. Mary rushes to tell her neighbors about the unfamiliar woman. Within an hour, everyone in Millbrook knows that a stranger has entered their community. People lock their doors, hide their children, and watch Elena from behind curtains and shutters. Elena finds a small inn and asks for a room. The innkeeper, a nervous man named Peter, reluctantly agrees but charges her double the normal rate. He explains that strangers require special precautions, extra security, additional prayers for protection. That evening, Elena eats dinner alone in the inn's common room. The few local patrons stare at her with hostile eyes, whispering among themselves about her strange clothes and foreign manner of speaking. "Where are you from?" asks a blacksmith named Robert, his voice challenging rather than curious. Elena explains that she's from Fairfield, just 3 towns away. She describes her journey, her search for work, her hope to build a new life in Millbrook. But her explanation only makes things worse. Why would someone leave a perfectly good town? What is she running from? What crime did she commit? What scandal drove her away from her home? The villagers' suspicions grow with each word Elena speaks. Her accent, barely noticeable to an outsider, sounds foreign and threatening to their ears. Her mannerisms, normal in her hometown, seem suspicious and secretive in this new place. Father Michael, the village priest, arrives at the inn to investigate the stranger. He questions Elena about her faith, her church attendance, her knowledge of local religious customs. Elena answers honestly, describing the church in her hometown, the priest she knew, the prayers she learned as a child. But her answers reveal differences in religious practice, variations in ceremony, slight changes in doctrine that Father Michael finds disturbing. "Your faith is unusual," Father Michael declares. "These practices you describe are not the true way. You've been corrupted by false teachings, heretical ideas, dangerous beliefs." Elena tries to explain that different towns sometimes do things differently, that variety in practice doesn't mean corruption in faith. But Father Michael isn't interested in her explanations. That night, as Elena sleeps in her small room above the inn, the villagers gather in the church to discuss the stranger problem. Father Michael leads a meeting, his voice echoing through the stone building. "This woman brings dangerous ideas into our community," he declares. "Her foreign ways could corrupt our children, weaken our faith, invite God's judgment upon us all." The villagers share their observations. Elena's clothes are cut in an unfamiliar style. Her hair is arranged differently than local women wear theirs. She walks with a confidence that seems unnatural, almost masculine. Most damning of all, she travels alone. What kind of woman travels without a man's protection? What kind of woman leaves her family and community to wander the roads like a vagabond? Clearly, she's either running from justice or working for dark powers. We must drive her out before she corrupts our town, Elder Thomas declares. Before she spreads her foreign poison among our people. The crowd murmurs its agreement. They've made their decision. Elena must go by force if necessary. The next morning, Elena wakes to find an angry mob outside the inn. 20 villagers stand in the street, holding torches and farm tools, their faces twisted with hatred and fear. "Leave our town, stranger," they shout. "Take your evil ways and go back where you came from." Elena appears at the inn's window, confused and frightened. She tries to explain that she's done nothing wrong, that she only wants to work and live peacefully among them. But the crowd isn't interested in explanations. They throw stones at the inn, breaking windows and threatening to burn the building down if Elena doesn't leave immediately. Peter, the innkeeper, terrified for his property, begs Elena to go. He refunds her money and helps her pack quickly, all while the crowd grows larger and more violent outside. Elena is escorted to the town boundary by the angry mob. They push her, spit on her, curse her as she walks. Some throw mud and rotting vegetables at her back. "If we see you again, stranger, we'll know you're a spy or a witch," they shout as she crosses a village line. "We'll burn you alive if you ever return." Elena walks away from Millbrook with tears streaming down her face. She's committed no crime, hurt no one, done nothing but exist in the wrong place at the wrong time. But her ordeal is far from over. Word spreads in neighboring towns about the dangerous stranger who was driven from Millbrook. Each village she approaches has already heard the story, already decided she's a threat. In the next town, they won't even let her enter. Guards at the gate turn her away with spears and harsh words. In the town after that, they allow her to buy supplies but follow her every move until she leaves. Elena becomes a wanderer, forever moving from place to place, never welcome anywhere, always viewed with suspicion and fear. Her crime? Being different, being unknown, being a stranger in a world that hated strangers. But what happened to Elena in the forest between towns shows how dangerous the medieval world was for the unwanted. Young Thomas loves music more than anything else in the world. At 14, he can whistle any tune he's ever heard, creating melodies that dance through the air like magic. His whistling brings smiles to people's faces during the day, joy to their hearts during celebrations. But Thomas makes a terrible mistake. He whistles after dark. It's a warm summer evening in 1489. Thomas walks home from his job at the blacksmith shop, feeling happy and content. The work was good, the pay fair, the future bright. Without thinking, he begins to whistle a cheerful tune that echoes through the quiet streets. From her window, old Martha hears the whistling and her blood runs cold. She knows what whistling at night means. She's heard the stories, learned the warnings, understood the dangers that come with musical sounds after sunset. Whistling after dark calls the demons. It summons evil spirits. It opens doorways between the world of the living and the realm of the damned. Thomas doesn't know this, but his innocent music is an invitation to hell itself. Martha rushes to tell her neighbors about the dangerous whistling. They listen with growing horror as she describes the unholy sounds echoing through their peaceful town. "We must stop him," whispers William the carpenter, before the demons answer his call. The neighbors gather in the street, searching for the source of the whistling. They follow the sound until they find Thomas, still walking and whistling without a care in the world. "Stop that evil noise." Martha shouts at him, "You're calling demons to our town." Thomas stops whistling, confused and frightened by the angry faces surrounding him. He tries to explain that he was just happy, just making music, just expressing joy in the simple pleasure of being alive. But the neighbors aren't interested in his explanations. They've heard demon calling when they hear it. They know evil when they see it. And they won't let Thomas summon hellish forces into their community. "We heard you calling to Satan," accuses Robert the baker. "We heard you whistling demon songs in the darkness. What evil have you brought to our town?" Thomas protests his innocence, but his words fall on deaf ears. The crowd grows larger as more people emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion and the accusations of supernatural evil. Father Benedict arrives, his face stern with righteous anger. He's dealt with demon callers before. He knows how to handle young people who traffic with dark forces. Whistling at night is an ancient form of devil worship, the priest declares. It's how witches communicate with their masters, how demons are summoned from the depths of hell. Thomas falls to his knees, begging the priest to believe him. He swears he's never met a demon, never worshipped the devil, never intended to call evil spirits. He was just whistling because he felt happy. But Father Benedict has heard these denials before. In his experience, people who summon demons rarely admit to their crimes. They always claim innocence, always make excuses, always try to appear normal and harmless. Bring him to the church. Father Benedict commands. We must determine how deeply the devil has corrupted his soul. They drag Thomas to the church basement, where Father Benedict keeps special tools for dealing with supernatural crimes. The room is dark and cold, filled with shadows that seem to move on their own. "Tell me about your bargain with Satan." Father Benedict demands. "What did you promise the devil in exchange for your musical abilities?" Thomas sobs that he's made no bargains, has no special abilities, was just whistling a simple tune. But his whistling was too perfect, too beautiful, too enchanting to be natural. Clearly, he has supernatural help. They lock Thomas in a cell beneath the church, where he spends 3 days without food or water. They tell him that fasting will weaken the demons inside him, making it easier to drive them out. On the 4th day, Father Benedict returns with 2 other priests and a collection of holy instruments. They sprinkle Thomas with blessed water, wave burning incense around his cell, and chant prayers in Latin. "Confess your sins," they command. "Admit your alliance with evil forces. Tell us how long you've been a servant of darkness." Thomas, weak from hunger and terrified by their accusations, maintains his innocence. He begs them to understand that he's just a normal boy who likes to whistle. He promises never to make music at night again if they'll just let him go home. But his pleas only convince the priest that the demons have a strong hold on his soul. If Thomas won't confess willingly, they'll have to force the truth out of him. They bring out the tools of persuasion. Iron clamps designed to crush fingers. Heated brands that leave permanent marks. Thumb screws that apply pressure until bones crack. The devil protects his servants from pain. Father Benedict explains. If you feel no agony, it proves you're possessed. If you scream, it means the demons are fighting to stay inside you. They begin with the thumb screws. Thomas screams immediately, the pain shooting through his hands like fire. The priests nod knowingly. The demons are indeed fighting to maintain their hold on the boy. Tell us about the music the demons taught you. They demand as they tighten the screws. What evil songs do they whisper in your ears at night? Thomas gasps that no one taught him to whistle, that he learned by listening to birds and copying their songs. But his answer only proves how cleverly the demons have deceived him. They continue the torture for hours. Thomas passes out from pain several times, but they revive him with cold water and continue their holy work. They're convinced they're saving his soul, even as they destroy his body. Finally, broken by agony and desperate to make the pain stop, Thomas confesses. Yes, he says, demons taught him to whistle. Yes, he's been calling evil spirits. Yes, he deserves punishment for his crimes against God. The priests smile with satisfaction. Another demon caller has been exposed. Another threat to the community eliminated. But what they decided to do with Thomas after his confession still haunts the village to this day. Isabella finds a kitten on a cold December morning in 1503. It's small, shivering, and completely black except for tiny white paws that look like socks. The little creature mews pitifully from beneath a pile of old rags behind the baker's shop. Isabella's heart melts. She's always loved animals, and this helpless kitten clearly needs care. She scoops it up, wraps it in her shawl, and takes it home to her small cottage on the edge of town. She names the kitten Shadow because of its dark fur and quiet movements. Shadow grows into a beautiful, affectionate cat who follows Isabella everywhere, purrs when she's sad, and keeps her company during long winter nights. For 6 months, Isabella and Shadow live in peaceful happiness. The cat catches mice, keeps Isabella's cottage pest-free, and provides a loving companionship that makes her small life feel complete. But Isabella doesn't understand that owning a black cat is the most dangerous thing a person can do in the Middle Ages. The trouble starts when Father Marcus sees Shadow sitting in Isabella's window. The priest stops dead in his tracks, his face going pale with horror. A black cat is the ultimate symbol of evil, the devil's favorite animal, a sure sign of witchcraft. Father Marcus has read every book about demons and devil worship. He knows that black cats are not pets. They're familiars, supernatural creatures that serve witches and help them cast spells. Any person who owns a black cat is clearly a practicing witch. That evening, Father Marcus visits Isabella's cottage. He sees Shadow curled up by the fireplace, looking perfectly innocent and content. But the priest knows better than to be fooled by the creature's normal appearance. That animal is an agent of Satan. Father Marcus declares, pointing at Shadow with a trembling finger, it's a demon in disguise, sent to corrupt your soul and drag you into hell. Isabella laughs, thinking the priest is joking. She explains how Shadow is just a sweet, gentle cat who loves to play and cuddle. She tells him about finding the kitten as an abandoned baby, nursing it back to health, watching it grow into a loving companion. But Father Marcus isn't amused by her story. In his mind, Isabella's attachment to Black Cat proves that she's already been corrupted. The demon has successfully disguised itself as a harmless pet, gaining access to her home and heart. You must destroy this creature immediately, Father Marcus commands, before it completes its work of damnation, before it turns you into a full servant of darkness. Isabella refuses. Shadow is her beloved pet, her only companion, her dearest friend. She won't hurt an innocent animal based on superstitious fears about fur color. Her refusal confirms Father Marcus's worst suspicions. A normal Christian woman would immediately obey a priest's command to eliminate evil. Isabella's defiance proves that the black cat has already corrupted her beyond salvation. Father Marcus leaves Isabella's cottage, but he doesn't give up his mission. He spreads word throughout the town about the witch who lives on the edge of their community, the woman who openly consorts with demonic creatures. The story grows with each telling. Shadow becomes a monster that flies through the night, casting spells and cursing innocent people. Isabella becomes a powerful witch who uses her familiar to work evil magic against her neighbors. People start blaming Isabella and Shadow for every misfortune that befalls the town. When someone's cow stops giving milk, they say Isabella cursed it. When a child falls sick, they claim Shadow cast an evil spell. When crops fail or rain doesn't come, they point to the black cat as the source of their troubles. Isabella notices a change in how people treat her. Neighbors who once smiled and waved now cross the street to avoid her. Merchants refuse to sell her food. Children run away when they see her coming. But Isabella doesn't understand why everyone has turned against her. She has no idea that owning Shadow has marked her as a witch in their eyes. The situation explodes when little Mary, the blacksmith's daughter, falls into the well and drowns. The tragedy devastates the community, but their grief quickly turns to rage when someone suggests a cause for the accident. The witch's familiar pushed her in, declares Agnes the baker's wife. I saw that black devil cat near the well just yesterday. It was planning this murder, waiting for the right moment to strike. The accusation spreads like wildfire. Within hours, everyone in town believes that Isabella used Shadow to murder an innocent child. The black cat has finally revealed its true evil nature by claiming a young life. An angry mob forms outside Isabella's cottage. They carry torches, pitchforks, and ropes. Their faces are twisted with hatred and grief-fueled rage. "Bring out the witch," they shout. "Bring out the demon cat. Justice for little Mary." Isabella peers through her window at the crowd and feels her heart stop. She understands now why people have been avoiding her, why they look at her with fear and hatred. They think she's a witch because she owns a black cat. Shadow sits in her lap, purring softly, completely unaware that his beautiful dark fur has condemned them both to death. "We know you're in there, witch," the crowd shouts. "Come out and face justice for your crimes." Isabella holds Shadow close and makes a desperate decision. She'll try to escape through the back window, flee into the forest, find somewhere safe where she and her beloved cat can live in peace. But the mob has anticipated this. They've surrounded her cottage completely. There's no escape, no hope, no mercy waiting for a witch and her familiar. They break down Isabella's door with axes and clubs. Shadow hisses and tries to protect his owner, but someone catches him in a sack before he can escape. Isabella screams as they drag her from her home. She begs him to understand that Shadow is just a normal cat, that she's not a witch, that she's never hurt anyone or practiced magic. But her words fall on deaf ears. The mob has seen the evidence with their own eyes. Black cat equals witch, which equals evil. Evil must be destroyed. They tie Isabella to a wooden stake in the town square. They build a pile of wood around her feet. Shadow, still trapped in the sack, yowls pitifully from where they place him near the pyre. Confess your sins, witch. Father Marcus shouts over the crowd's angry voices. Admit that you used this demon cat to murder innocent Mary. Repent before you burn. Isabella sobs that she's innocent, that Shadow is innocent, that neither of them has ever harmed anyone. But the crowd doesn't believe her denials. Someone lights the kindling. Smoke begins to rise around Isabella's feet. Shadow's cries become more desperate as he senses the danger. But what happened next shows the true horror of medieval justice. The sky begins to darken on the morning of July 29, 1478. At first, people in the village of Thorndale assume clouds are covering the sun. But as the darkness grows deeper and more complete, they realize something far more terrifying is happening. A solar eclipse is consuming their world. Marcus the shepherd is the first to look directly at the phenomenon. He stares up at the sky, mesmerized by the sight of the moon slowly covering the sun. He's never seen anything so beautiful and frightening at the same time. But in the Middle Ages, looking at an eclipse isn't just dangerous for your eyes. It's dangerous for your soul. The villagers believe that eclipses are signs of God's anger, warnings of coming judgment, or attacks by demons trying to devour the sun. Anyone who stares at an eclipse is either working with the evil forces causing it, or foolish enough to challenge God's power directly. Old Catherine, the herb woman, sees Marcus gazing at the darkening sky. Her heart fills with terror. She knows what it means when someone looks directly at God's wrath without fear. He's working with the demons. Catherine shouts to anyone who will listen. He's helping them eat the sun. Her accusation spreads through the village like wildfire. People emerge from their homes where they've been hiding from the eclipse, and they see Marcus still standing in the field, his face turned upward toward the supernatural darkness. To the frightened villagers, Marcus's behavior is clearly unnatural. Normal people hide during eclipses, pray for protection, beg God to restore the sun. Only witches and demon worshippers stare directly at such terrifying displays of supernatural power. Father William arrives and sees Marcus silhouetted against the eerie twilight of the eclipse. The priest's face goes white with horror. He's read about people who work with demons to bring about eclipses, who help evil spirits attack the sun itself. Come away from there. Father William shouts at Marcus, stop looking at God's judgment. Stop helping the demons. But Marcus doesn't hear the priest's words. He's transfixed by the incredible sight above him. He's never imagined that such beauty could exist, that the sky could create such an amazing spectacle. His continued staring convinces the villagers that he's definitely in league with dark forces. Why else would he look directly at something so terrifying? Why else would he show no fear of God's obvious anger? The eclipse reaches totality. For several minutes, day becomes night. Stars appear in the sky. Animals act strangely. The temperature drops. The world feels like it's ending. And through it all, Marcus continues to watch, his face filled with wonder rather than terror. When the sun finally begins to reappear, the villagers emerge from their hiding places. They survived God's wrath, but they're convinced that Marcus played a role in causing the eclipse in the first place. He summoned this darkness, whispers Robert the Miller. He called on demons to attack the sun. We all saw him staring at it, helping it happen. The accusation grows stronger as people share their observations. Marcus didn't hide like a good Christian. He didn't pray like a faithful believer. He didn't show proper fear of God's supernatural display. Instead, he watched with apparent enjoyment, as if he was pleased by the terrifying darkness, as if he had helped create the eclipse himself. Father William organizes a group of village elders to confront Marcus about his suspicious behavior. They find him still in the field, rubbing his eyes and complaining about spots in his vision. The eclipse has damaged your sight, Father William observes. This is God's punishment for your unholy staring, but it's also proof of your guilt. Marcus tries to explain that he was simply curious about the natural phenomenon, that he'd never seen anything like it before, that he meant no harm to anyone. But his explanation only makes things worse. Curiosity about supernatural events is evidence of demonic influence. Interest in natural phenomena suggests he's been studying forbidden knowledge, learning things that only demons should know. No normal person would look directly at God's wrath. Father William declares, no faithful Christian would stare at such terrifying darkness. You are helping the demons, whether you admit it or not. The village court convenes to try Marcus for causing the eclipse through demonic collaboration. Witnesses testify about his strange behavior, his lack of proper fear, his obvious enjoyment of the supernatural darkness. The evidence against him seems overwhelming. Everyone saw him staring at the eclipse. Everyone noticed his lack of terror. Everyone observed his unnatural fascination with the demonic attack on the sun. Marcus tries to defend himself, explaining that he was simply amazed by the beauty of the eclipse, curious about how such a thing could happen, interested in understanding God's creation better. But his words only convince the court that he's been corrupted by forbidden knowledge. His scientific curiosity is seen as demonic influence. His sense of wonder is interpreted as evil collaboration. You have consorted with demons to bring darkness upon our community, the judge declares. You have helped evil forces attack the sun itself. You have shown no proper fear of God's supernatural power. The sentence is death by burning. Marcus will be executed as a witch and demon collaborator, his ashes scattered, so that his evil influence can never return to trouble the community. As they tie Marcus to the stake, he looks up at the sky one last time. The sun shines normally now, bright and warm and life-giving. He wonders if he'll ever understand the beautiful mystery he witnessed during the eclipse. The flames begin to rise around his feet. The crowd watches with satisfaction, convinced they're ridding their community of a dangerous demon worshiper. But as Marcus burns, the sky begins to darken again. Brother Francis loves numbers more than anything else in the world. In the monastery library, he spends hours studying ancient mathematical texts, working out complex calculations, discovering patterns and relationships that fill him with joy and wonder. It's 1521, and Francis has just made an incredible discovery. Using techniques learned from translated Arabic texts, he solved a problem that has puzzled scholars for centuries. His calculations are elegant, precise, and completely correct. Francis is so excited about his breakthrough that he decides to share it with his fellow monks during their evening study time. He stands before the group and begins to explain his mathematical reasoning, his face glowing with enthusiasm. But as Francis writes symbols and equations on his slate, the other monks begin to look uncomfortable. The numbers and symbols seem strange, foreign, almost magical. Where did Francis learn such complex techniques? How can he manipulate numbers with such supernatural skill? Brother Thomas, the oldest monk in the monastery, watches Francis work with growing alarm. The mathematical symbols look like the occult markings he's seen in books about witchcraft and demon summoning. Where did you learn these techniques? Brother Thomas asks, his voice filled with suspicion. Francis explains that he's been studying texts translated from Arabic, learning about algebra and advanced calculation methods developed by scholars in distant lands. But his explanation only makes things worse. Arabic texts are inherently suspicious to medieval Christian minds. Mathematics developed by non-Christians must be tainted with pagan beliefs, corrupt ideas, possibly even demonic knowledge. These symbols, Brother Thomas says, pointing at Francis's equations, they look like the marks that sorcerers use to summon demons. How do we know you haven't been practicing dark magic? Francis laughs, thinking Brother Thomas is joking. He explains that mathematics is simply a tool for understanding God's creation, a way to discover the divine order that underlies the natural world. But his laughter convinces the other monks that he's not taking their concerns seriously. His casual attitude toward what appears to be supernatural knowledge suggests that he's become comfortable with forces that should terrify any good Christian. Brother Augustine, the monastery's librarian, examines Francis's calculations more closely. The mathematical operations seem to work by themselves, producing correct answers through mysterious processes that ordinary minds can't understand. This is not natural learning, Brother Augustine declares. No human mind can perform such complex calculations without supernatural assistance. Brother Francis has clearly made a bargain with demonic forces. The accusation spreads to the monastery like wildfire. The other monks begin to avoid Francis, crossing themselves when they see him, whispering prayers for protection from his corrupted presence. Francis tries to defend himself by explaining the logic behind his mathematical methods. He shows them how each step follows from the previous one, how the techniques are based on reason and observation, not magic or supernatural influence. But his detailed explanations only convince the monks that his corruption runs deeper than they initially suspected. The fact that Francis can explain his methods so clearly suggests that he's been studying forbidden knowledge for a long time. Abbot Gregory, the head of the monastery, calls Francis to his chambers for questioning. The abbot is a learned man who studied theology and philosophy, but Francis's mathematical abilities far exceed anything in the abbot's experience. These calculations you perform, Abbot Gregory says, they're beyond human capability. You solve problems in minutes that would take normal men months or years. This suggests supernatural assistance. Francis tries to explain that mathematics is like any other skill. It improves with practice and study. He describes how he spent years learning these techniques, gradually building his understanding through careful observation and logical reasoning. But Abbot Gregory has made up his mind. In his experience, sudden improvements in ability usually indicate demonic bargains. People who become extraordinarily skilled at something have typically traded their souls for supernatural powers. You will cease these mathematical pursuits immediately, Abbot Gregory commands. You will burn all books containing such knowledge. You will confess your sins and undergo penance for trafficking with dark forces. Francis is devastated. Mathematics isn't just his passion. It's his way of understanding and celebrating God's creation. To abandon his studies would be like cutting out his heart. He begs Abbot Gregory to reconsider, to see that mathematical knowledge serves God rather than opposing him. He argues that understanding divine patterns in numbers brings glory to the Creator. But his arguments fall on deaf ears. The abbot has seen the supernatural symbols, witnessed the unnatural calculations, observed Francis's comfortable familiarity with forbidden knowledge. You are corrupted beyond salvation, Abbot Gregory declares. Your mathematical abilities come from demons, not from God. You have traded your soul for the power to manipulate numbers in ways that normal humans cannot. They strip Francis of his monk's robes and lock him in a cell beneath the monastery. The stone walls are covered with religious symbols designed to weaken demonic influence and force supernatural beings to reveal their true nature. For 7 days, they leave Francis alone with nothing but bread and water. They tell him that fasting will weaken the demons that give him his mathematical abilities, making it easier for him to confess his true nature. On the 8th day, Abbot Gregory returns with 2 other senior monks and a collection of Francis's mathematical writings. They plan to force him to watch as they burn his life's work. Renounce your demonic knowledge, Abbot Gregory commands. Admit that your mathematical abilities come from Satan. Confess your bargain with dark forces. Francis watches in horror as they light a fire in the center of his cell. One by one, they feed his mathematical texts into the flames. Years of careful study and brilliant insights disappear in smoke and ash. But Francis's real torment is just beginning. If he won't confess to witchcraft voluntarily, they'll have to extract the truth through other means. But what they did to Francis to force his confession shows how dangerous it was to be too intelligent in the Middle Ages. Little Anna is born on a cold February morning in 1456 with a small, dark birthmark on her left shoulder. The mark is shaped roughly like a crescent moon, no bigger than a coin, completely harmless and barely visible under her clothes. But in the Middle Ages, birthmarks aren't seen as natural skin variations. They're viewed as marks left by the devil himself, signs that a child has been claimed by evil forces before birth. Anna's mother, Marie, tries to hide the birthmark from neighbors and visitors. She dresses Anna in high-neck clothes, bathes her in private, and prays every night that God will somehow remove the terrible mark from her daughter's skin. For 5 years, Marie successfully keeps Anna's secret. But secrets in small medieval villages are hard to maintain forever. The truth comes out during Anna's 6th summer, when she falls into the village pond while playing with other children. Good-hearted neighbors pull her from the water and help remove her wet clothes to keep her from catching cold. That's when they see it. The dark, crescent-shaped mark on Anna's shoulder, standing out starkly against her pale skin. Agnes the baker's wife gasps and crosses herself. She's heard about devil's marks, read about them in church pamphlets, learned to recognize the signs of demonic influence. "Dear God," Agnes whispers, "the child bears Satan's mark." Word spreads through the village faster than fire through dry grass. Within hours, everyone knows that little Anna carries the devil's brand on her skin. People begin to remember strange things about Anna. She's always been too clever for her age, too curious about things that don't concern children. She asks too many questions, learns too quickly, shows too much interest in books and learning. Now they understand why. The devil marked Anna as his own before she was born. He's been guiding her development, preparing her to serve his evil purposes when she comes of age. Father Benedict arrives at Marie's cottage that evening, his face grave with concern. He demands to examine Anna's birthmark personally to determine its supernatural significance. Marie reluctantly shows him the mark. Father Benedict studies it carefully, noting its shape, size, and location. His expression grows more troubled with each observation. "This is definitely a devil's mark," he declares. The crescent shape indicates allegiance to pagan moon worship. The location on her left shoulder shows that evil has taken root near her heart. Marie begs Father Benedict to help her daughter. She explains that Anna is a good child, sweet and loving, who's never shown any signs of evil behavior. But Father Benedict isn't swayed by Marie's pleas. He's seen devil children before. They often appear normal and innocent, which makes them even more dangerous than obviously evil creatures. The devil is patient, Father Benedict explains. He marks children early and allows them to grow up normally, gaining people's trust and affection. Then, when they reach adulthood, he activates their evil nature and uses them to corrupt entire communities. The priest orders Marie to bring Anna to the church for special prayers and purification rituals. If they act quickly, he says, they might be able to weaken the devil's hold on the child. But the purification rituals are brutal and terrifying for a 6-year-old girl. They pour holy water on Anna's birthmark until her skin burns and blisters. They hold her down while chanting Latin prayers meant to drive out demonic influence. Anna screams and cries, begging them to stop hurting her. She promises to be good, to obey all rules, to never do anything wrong. But her pleas only convince Father Benedict that the devil is fighting to maintain his hold on her. "The demon is strong in this one," he tells Marie. "It will take more drastic measures to save her soul." They begin a series of exorcism rituals that continue for weeks. Anna is brought to church every day, where they perform painful ceremonies designed to drive out evil spirits. They scrape at her birthmark with blessed knives, trying to remove the devil's mark from her skin. They burn incense so thick that Anna can barely breathe. They shout prayers and commands of the supposed demons hiding inside her small body. Anna becomes thin and pale from the constant trauma. She stops playing with other children, stops laughing, stops showing any signs of the curiosity and intelligence that once made her special. But the birthmark remains unchanged, and Father Benedict grows increasingly frustrated with his lack of progress. "The devil's mark is permanent," he finally admits to Marie. "It cannot be removed by prayer or purification. Your daughter will carry Satan's brand for her entire life." The news devastates Marie, but Father Benedict isn't finished with his terrible pronouncements. "A child bearing the devil's mark can never be trusted," he continues. "She will always be a threat to this community. Even if she appears normal now, her evil nature will eventually emerge." Marie asks what this means for Anna's future. Can she go to school, play with friends, live a normal life despite her birthmark? Father Benedict shakes his head sadly. She must be watched constantly for signs of supernatural behavior. She cannot be allowed to learn reading or writing, as knowledge would only strengthen her demonic abilities. She must be kept away from other children, lest she corrupt them with her evil influence. Anna's life becomes a prison of suspicion and isolation. Neighbors cross the street to avoid her. Parents forbid their children to play with her. Merchants refuse to serve her family. Even small, innocent actions become evidence of Anna's supernatural nature. When she pets a stray cat, people say she's communicating with a familiar spirit. When she picks flowers, they claim she's gathering ingredients for evil potions. Anna grows up knowing that everyone in her community views her as a threat, a monster, a creature marked by the devil himself. Her childhood becomes a nightmare of constant surveillance and suspicious scrutiny. But the worst is yet to come, because when Anna reaches her 13th birthday, Father Benedict decides that her evil nature has matured enough to pose a real danger to the community. But what they planned for Anna on her 13th birthday shows the ultimate cruelty of medieval superstition. Sarah the herb woman has gentle hands and a kind heart. For 20 years, she's helped the sick people of Milford with natural remedies passed down from her grandmother. Her teas ease fevers. Her poultices heal wounds. Her knowledge saves lives. But in the spring of 1482, Sarah makes a fatal mistake. She saves the wrong person's life. It starts when 7-year-old Timothy, the blacksmith's son, falls desperately ill with a burning fever. His parents try everything they know: prayers, bloodletting, bitter medicines from a traveling physician. Nothing works. Timothy grows weaker each day, his small body burning with heat. In desperation, the blacksmith's wife comes to Sarah in the middle of the night. She begs the herb woman to help her dying son, offering everything she owns in payment. Sarah follows the desperate mother to their cottage, where Timothy lies unconscious and barely breathing. His fever is so high that his skin feels like fire to the touch. Working quickly, Sarah prepares a cooling tea from willow bark and mint. She bathes Timothy's burning skin with wet cloth soaked in lavender water. She creates a paste from healing herbs and applies it to his chest to help him breathe. For 3 days and nights, Sarah tends to the boy. She forces small sips of medicine between his cracked lips, changes his fever-soaked bedding, monitors his breathing through the darkest hours. On the 4th morning, Timothy's fever breaks. His eyes flutter open, clear and bright. He asks for water, then food, then his favorite toy. The crisis has passed. Timothy's parents weep with joy and gratitude. Their son will live. Sarah has worked a miracle, pulling him back from the edge of death through her healing knowledge. But Sarah's miracle becomes her downfall when Father Marcus hears about Timothy's recovery. The priest has been watching Sarah for years, suspicious of her healing abilities and the strange remedies she uses. In Father Marcus's mind, Sarah's success rate is too high to be natural. She saves too many people, cures too many diseases, works too many miracles. No mortal person should have such power over life and death. Father Marcus tells the village elders, Sarah's healing abilities come from an unholy source. She has made a bargain with dark forces. Timothy's recovery provides the evidence Father Marcus has been waiting for. The boy was clearly dying. The physician had given up hope. The family had prepared for his death. No natural remedy should have been powerful enough to save him. She used witchcraft to heal the child. Father Marcus declares she summoned demons to restore his health. This is proof of her unholy alliance with Satan himself. The priest's accusation spread through Milford like poison in a well. People who once blessed Sarah's name now whisper about her in fear. Families who owed their lives to her healing suddenly remember strange things about her methods. She always worked at night, recalls Margaret the Weaver. Honest healers work in daylight, but Sarah preferred darkness. That should have been our first warning. Others remember how Sarah's remedies seemed too effective, too powerful for simple herbs and plants. They begin to believe that her medicines contain supernatural ingredients. Demon blood, curse roots, ingredients that no godly healer would use. Dr. Aldwin, the traveling physician who failed to save Timothy, supports Father Marcus's accusations. His professional pride is wounded by Sarah's success where he failed. If she succeeded through natural means, it makes him look incompetent. But if she used witchcraft, His failure becomes understandable. I use proper medical techniques. Dr. Aldwin tells anyone who will listen. I followed established procedures, used approved treatments. But witchcraft always overpowers legitimate medicine. The demons gave her unfair advantage. Timothy's parents find themselves in an impossible position. They're grateful that their son lives, but they're terrified by the suggestion that his healing came from evil sources. If Sarah used witchcraft to save Timothy, what does that mean for his soul? We didn't know. Timothy's mother sobs to Father Marcus. We just wanted our boy to live. We didn't realize she was using dark magic. Father Marcus nods understandingly. Satan often disguises his evil works as acts of mercy, he explains. He saves one life to damn 10 souls. This is how he spreads his influence through communities. The priest orders Timothy's parents to bring their son for special purification rituals. If Sarah used demonic power to heal him, Timothy's body and soul might be corrupted by evil magic. Meanwhile, the accusations against Sarah grow more elaborate with each retelling. People claim they saw her gathering herbs by moonlight, talking to her plants in strange languages, mixing her medicines with mysterious substances. Someone remembers seeing a black bird perched on Sarah's roof, obviously a demon familiar sent to assist her witchcraft. Another person recalls that Sarah's garden grew unusually well, producing herbs that were larger and more potent than normal plants. She made a pact with the devil, declares Agnes the baker's wife. She traded her soul for supernatural healing powers. That's why her remedies work when proper medicine fails. Sarah doesn't understand the growing hostility she faces. When she goes to market, vendors refuse to sell to her. Former patients cross the street to avoid her. Children run away screaming when they see her approaching. She tries to defend herself, explaining that her remedies come from generations of accumulated knowledge. Careful observation of what helps sick people recover. She describes the natural properties of healing herbs, the logical reasons why her treatments work, but her explanations only make things worse. People reason that if Sarah knows so much about medicine, she must have supernatural sources of information. No mortal woman should understand healing so thoroughly. Father Marcus organizes a formal investigation into Sarah's activities. He interviews her patients, examines her herb supplies, searches her cottage for evidence of demonic influence. The evidence mounts quickly. Sarah owns books about healing, proof that she studied forbidden knowledge. Her herbs are organized in ways that suggest ritual use rather than simple medicine. Her success rate is suspiciously high for someone using only natural remedies. Most damning of all, several of Sarah's former patients have suffered relapses or died months after their initial recovery. Father Marcus claims this proves that Sarah's demonic healing was temporary, that the devil eventually collects payment for his assistance. She saves people briefly to gain their trust. Father Marcus explains to the village court. Then the demons she serves claim their souls permanently. This is how witches spread evil through communities. The court summoned Sarah to defend herself against charges of witchcraft and demonic healing. She stands before the judge, priests, and village elders, her life hanging in the balance. Sarah tries to explain her methods rationally. She describes how willow bark reduces fever because it contains natural cooling properties. She explains how certain herbs fight infection, how others promote healing, how generations of healers have used these same remedies successfully. But her detailed knowledge only convinces the court that she's been studying forbidden arts. Normal people don't understand medicine so thoroughly. Her expertise proves supernatural influence rather than natural learning. You claim these remedies are natural, Judge William declares, but your success rate exceeds what any mortal healer should achieve. You cure diseases that defeat trained physicians. This suggests demonic assistance. Sarah's defense crumbles as witness after witness testifies against her. People she saved describe her midnight visits, her strange-smelling medicines, her unnatural confidence in treating seemingly hopeless cases. Timothy's mother takes a stand and tearfully describes how Sarah saved her son when all hope seemed lost. But instead of supporting Sarah's innocence, her testimony becomes evidence of supernatural intervention. No natural remedy should have been powerful enough to save my boy, she admits. He was dying, and she brought him back from death's door. Only dark magic could accomplish such a miracle. The court deliberates for less than an hour. The evidence is overwhelming. Sarah has admitted to extensive knowledge of healing, demonstrated supernatural abilities, and worked miracles that exceed human capability. Guilty of witchcraft and trafficking with demons, Judge William announces, "You have used evil powers to deceive this community, corrupting souls while pretending to save bodies." Sarah collapses as they pronounce her sentence. Death by burning, with her ashes scattered prevent her evil spirit from returning to trouble the living. They drag her to the town square where a wooden stake and pile of kindling wait. The entire population of Milford gathers to watch justice being done. As they tie Sarah to the stake, she looks out at the crowd and sees faces of people she's helped over the years. Mothers whose children she saved from deadly fevers. Fathers whose infected wounds she healed. Elderly people whose pain she eased with gentle remedies. All of them watch silently as the woman who saved their lives prepares to burn for crime of being too good at healing. Someone lights the kindling. Smoke begins to rise around Sarah's feet. She closes her eyes and prays for forgiveness, not for her sins, but for the sin of caring too much about human suffering. The flames reach higher. The crowd watches with satisfaction, convinced they're ridding their community of a dangerous witch. But as Sarah burns, a terrible irony unfolds. Without her healing knowledge, the next epidemic that strikes Milford will kill dozens of people who might have lived if the herb woman had been there to help them. The very people who cheered her death will die because they destroyed the person who could have saved them. As the flames consume Sarah's body, her screams echo through the village square one final time. Then silence falls over Milford, broken only by the crackling of burning wood and the whispered prayers of satisfied witnesses. The crowd disperses slowly, each person returning to their daily life with the comfort of knowing they've eliminated evil from their community. They sleep peacefully that night, believing they've made their world safer by destroying a witch. But in the weeks that follow, something terrible begins to happen. Little Timothy, the boy whose miraculous recovery started the witch hunt, falls ill again. His fever returns with vengeance, burning hotter than before. His parents frantically search for someone to help him, but there is no one left who knows Sarah's healing methods. Dr. Alwyn, the physician whose failure led to Sarah's success, tries his traditional treatments. He bleeds Timothy until the boy is white as snow. He forces bitter medicines down his throat. He applies heated irons to draw out the sickness. Timothy dies screaming in agony, his small body broken by treatments that cause more harm than the disease itself. His parents realize, too late, that Sarah's gentle remedies have been their son's only hope. They burned the one person who could have saved him, and now their child is gone forever. The tragedy spreads throughout Milford. Without Sarah's knowledge of healing herbs, minor illnesses become deadly plagues. Infections that she could have cured with simple poultices turn into gangrene that requires amputation. Fevers that her teas could have broken burn through families like wildfire. Within 6 months, more people die from lack of proper healing than Sarah had saved in her entire 20-year career. The village that destroyed her because she was too good at preserving life now faces death on a scale they never imagined. But the horror doesn't end with Milford's epidemic. Across medieval Europe, similar stories play out in thousands of villages and towns. People are burned, hanged, tortured, and banished for crimes that exist only in the fearful minds of their neighbors. Elena, the stranger who sought only work and shelter, dies alone in the forest, her body picked clean by wolves. No one mourns her passing because no one ever knew her name. Marcus, the beardless healer, survives his beating and banishment but never practices medicine again. His knowledge dies with him, and countless people suffer needlessly from ailments he could have cured. Brother Francis, the mathematician, has his mind broken by torture until he can no longer remember the beautiful equations that once brought him joy. Mathematical knowledge is set back by centuries as scholars learn to hide their discoveries rather than share them. Margaret, the left-handed child, grows up believing she's fundamentally evil. She lives in constant fear of her own natural tendencies, never knowing the simple joy of writing with her dominant hand. Thomas, the whistler, never makes music again after witnessing what happened to other night whistlers in neighboring towns. His songs die with him, and the world becomes a little less beautiful. Anna, marked by a simple birthmark, spent her entire life as an outcast, never allowed to experience love, friendship, or acceptance. She dies alone and forgotten, her potential contributions to humanity lost forever. And across Europe, in countless villages and towns, the pattern repeats endlessly. Intelligence becomes evidence of demonic influence. Kindness becomes proof of witchcraft. Curiosity becomes a sign of heretical thinking. The Middle Ages didn't just punish evil. They punished goodness, intelligence, creativity, and compassion. They destroyed the very qualities that make humanity worth preserving. Think about this. How many brilliant minds were silenced before they could change the world? How many potential artists, scientists, healers, and philosophers were burned alive for the crime of being exceptional? How many times did humanity set itself back decades or centuries by destroying its most gifted members? The people in these stories weren't evil. They weren't criminals or monsters. They were ordinary human beings whose only crimes were being different, being intelligent, being curious, or being kind. They were people like you and me, living in a world that punished them for the very qualities we admire today. Sarah the healer would be celebrated in our time as a skilled medical practitioner. Brother Francis would be honored as a brilliant mathematician. Elena would be welcomed as a valuable new community member. But they lived in an age when difference meant death, when curiosity led to torture, when healing the sick could get you burned alive. As you go to sleep tonight, remember their stories. Remember the price that humanity paid for its fear of the unknown, its hatred of the different, its suspicion of the gifted. Remember that the capacity for such cruelty still exists in human hearts. The only thing standing between us and a return to such darkness is our commitment to knowledge, tolerance, and compassion. The Middle Ages teach us that civilization is fragile, that progress can be reversed, that the light of human reason can be extinguished by the darkness of superstition and fear. But they also teach us something else, that even in humanity's darkest hours, there are still people brave enough to read forbidden books, gentle enough to heal the sick, curious enough to stare at eclipses, and kind enough to help strangers. These people died for their virtues, but their virtues live on in us. Every time we choose knowledge over ignorance, tolerance over hatred, curiosity over fear, we honor their memory and ensure their sacrifices weren't in vain. The medieval world was brutal to those who dared to be different, but in the end, it was the different ones, the readers, the healers, the questioners, the dreamers, who dragged humanity out of the darkness and into the light. Their stories remind us that being ordinary was safe in the Middle Ages, but it was extraordinary people, the ones willing to risk everything for truth and knowledge and compassion, who made our modern world possible. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, remember Sarah and Marcus and Elena and all the others. Remember that their courage to be different, even unto death, is a reason you can sleep safely in a world that celebrates rather than destroys the very qualities that made them targets. Remember that we stand on the shoulders of giants who were burned as witches, hanged as heretics, and tortured as demons. And remember that the price of returning to such darkness is eternal vigilance against the forces of fear, ignorance, and hatred that still lurk in human hearts, waiting for their chance to rise again. The Middle Ages ended, but the medieval mindset never truly dies. It sleeps, waiting for the right moment to awaken, and once again punish the different, the intelligent, the compassionate, and the curious. Our job is to make sure it never wakes up again. Sweet dreams, and remember the forgotten victims of humanity's cruelest age.